What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Recher REACTS. I am your host, Jay Recher. Hope everybody is having a good Friday night, whether you're here in the Tampa Bay area or abroad. And listen, if you're a Rays fan, you got to be pretty damn happy with how that game ended with a big walk-off win over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Um, we're waiting to hear some news. Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times says that Tyler Alexander, scratched from his start tonight for AAA Durham, headed to St. Pete to join the Rays on Saturday. That means a pitcher is going on the IL. Don't know who it is yet. I was kind of waiting to go live until we heard the news of who it was, but listen, we didn't get it. We didn't get it. So I was just like, I'm not gonna wait here all night. Not gonna wait here all night. I'm just gonna hop on and start talking about the things that I was focused on today. And yeah, that starts with the Tampa Bay Rays. And listen, it's been kind of a weird couple of games where they've been coming up short, and you look at it and you go, all right, well, how much does this group really have left? But they're showing some resiliency in this game tonight by bouncing back. P. Fairbanks gives up the two-run home run to Corbin Carroll in the ninth inning, and you're like, oh gosh, here we go again. Because for all the unluckiness that this team has had this year, they just no bounce really has gone their way. And whether it's injuries, whether it's guys that are slumping, they've had such a difficult time being able to win two, three, four, five, six in a row. They've had struggles. They've had struggles, and they haven't had many games tonight where some of the bounces went their way. You saw the blue hit from Josh Lowe in the eighth inning there to give him the lead. That kind of bounced away from the left fielder. And then also on the winning run at the end there, when you see the ball hit by Brandon Lau up the middle, center fielder tries to pick up the ball with his bare hand. He bobbles it. Great job by Brady Williams. The Rays third base coach did a fantastic job tonight. And as the center fielder tries to pick up the ball with his bare hand, what happens? He is unable to grasp it. Johnny DeLuca sent home, Rays win, and then everybody's having a blast. T Pain performing over at Tropicana Field tonight. There was a lot of people at the game, and for them to be able to be there for such a great atmosphere, and they get rewarded with the win, and they're rewarded with T Pain, it just doesn't get much better than that. So we're going to talk a bunch of Rays here. Tomorrow night show for sure after the Buccaneers preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll talk a lot of football mañana, but tonight will definitely be a ton of baseball. And then a Friday night SmackDown recap as well. A fantastic show from start to finish, including my five favorite entrances of all time. And I will definitely put this out on my social media. So hopefully you'll contribute to that conversation as well. As always, we want to hear from you. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching from. We can accept the comments, not on Twitter, unfortunately, but on YouTube. So check me out, youtube.com/at JRecher10. That's JAYRECHER10. And for my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. Hit that notifications bell so you can get alert every single time that I go live, because we're trying to make this more interactive as we go. But I wanted to start out talking about the cornerstones of the Tampa Bay Rays. And again, we'll keep an eye. I got Mark Topkins' Twitter pulled up. I actually have all the Rays guys, all their Twitters pulled up just in case we hear some breaking news in regards to who is injured for the Rays and the reason why Tyler Alexander was called up. But I'm looking at this Rays team, and it's hard because as much as they're not officially out of it yet, and I hate to say that a team like them, like that they're out of it when they're not, even though it's it's been a tough putt this year, and it seems like it's two steps forward, two steps back, and they really haven't been able to gain any ground. When they had a nice streak about a month ago, I think they gained like 1.5 games in the standing, and then when they started struggling, they only fell back like a game and a half. So it's been a weird season altogether where they haven't really been able to make up ground. And that's why the old adage rings true. You can't always make the playoffs in April, but you can certainly miss the playoffs in April. So with the team not having the same kind of start that they had in 2023, they were really behind the eight ball from the jump. So it's hard, when you're looking at this team to not start looking ahead, even though technically they're not out of it. When you look at the standings as we speak, the Yankees are in first place in the American League, a full game ahead of the Baltimore Orioles and the Boston Red Sox. They're 7 games behind the Orioles, and then the Rays are 4 games behind the Red Sox. in the wild card. The Rays now sit 6.5 games behind that third wild card spot. That's the Kansas City Royals. And in context, they're 12 games over 500. The Rays, 1 game under. Rays 60-61, 121 games played on the season, 41 games left. They're going to have to do something historic down the stretch to be able to, kind of bounce back and to be able to make the playoffs here. So I've been kind of pushing back and waiting on the conversation of, all right, let's look ahead to 2025. But when you look at the roster for this team, you start thinking to yourself, all right, well, we know who's on the team this year, but who are the cornerstones on this team for not just next year and beyond? So I kind of wanted to take a look at the guys that I think are going to be the cornerstones of this team going forward. And it'll start obviously in 2025, and then see if those guys can continue to be on the squad. And for that case, I am not going to add two guys, and this may be a little controversial, and I don't mean it to sound like that, uh, but it's going to not include Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau, because those are two guys, and I know, in my opinion, they would have traded Brandon Lau at the trade deadline if they weren't going to pick up his option, and they do like Brandon Lau. He has been healthy this year, which is so good to see. He comes up with some big clutch hits, but at 30 years old, I just don't know if he's technically part of the future of this club, nor Yandy Diaz at 33. So I'm not going to include those guys. I actually just have one guy, the only infielder as of now that I believe that is a cornerstone for this Rays team is Junior Caminero. And you see him getting called up, 21 years young. They brought him up last year, down the stretch, to see if he could be a factor. And if he didn't get banged up twice this year, he probably would have been up sooner. He definitely would have been up sooner. He's up now. He's here to stay. And I think that's the easiest one. Junior Caminero is one of the cornerstones of this team. Then when I look at the outfield, I look at a guy that made some big time contributions tonight. I look at a guy in Josh Lowe who has all of the talent in the world, and we saw his potential last season. We haven't really seen it as much this year, but that guy, when he is firing on all cylinders, he's a five-tool player, and he is such a good base stealer. You saw it tonight too. He is a guy that takes good jumps, takes good leads, good, takes good leads, gets good jumps. Um, and man, he's efficient as hell on the base pass. I like the headiness of his game. I like the IQ that he has. So I got Junior Caminero in the infield, Josh Lowe in the outfield, and I'm going to add another guy. And I know may not be this may not be a popular opinion, but I think Dylan Carlson is one of the cornerstones of this team. And I know I may be early to the party, and I get that. But I'm looking at a guy that was a former first round pick, a guy that came third in the rookie of the year voting. This is a guy hit a home run tonight, switch hitter, outfielder, and he's the ultimate change of scenery guy. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if Dylan Carlson was the left fielder going into not only spring training but the regular season next year for the Tampa Bay Rays. Think about him like in a more diverse lineup, in a more successful lineup. That guy batting sixth or seventh. It doesn't matter, who's on the mound. That guy can contribute in a big way. If you could lock him in left and lock Josh Lowe in right field, I think that's a positive. But as of right now, I think you have two, and at the best three cornerstones on this team that are, infield and outfield players. So one guy in the infield, one, maybe two guys in the outfield. Then you look at the pitchers, and I think that's where all of your cornerstones really are. You start, for me, it's Taj Bradley. And he showed in the month of July just how dynamic he could be. And he's got all the makeups of a future ace on this team. 23 years young, 6'2", 190. The experience that he was able to get last year was just incredibly important. And you could see it this year. He was able to just kind of settle in, and he just looked so composed. I mean, to be fair, he looked composed last year too. But this year, he was able to buddy up that composure with the success of just going out there and shoving. Like he was insane. I was very, very impressed by what we saw from him this year, and I think it's only the beginning for Taj Bradley. The other guy I'm going to bring up, it's going to be Shane Baz. And when you look at Shane, we haven't really seen him too much since he came across in that trade for Chris Archer years ago, alongside Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow. joining the Rays from the Pittsburgh Pirates, but he's only 25 years old. And he's another guy, very repeatable mechanics, and he has the ability to go deep. And last game picked up the L, but he went 7 innings, 7 strong. If you tell me that a guy like Shane Baz, who, when all said and done, if everybody's healthy, is probably going to be your three, maybe your four, and he's going 7 innings with that kind of stuff, I really like him. I think the sky's the limit. He's just got to stay healthy. And I hope for his case, he does that. Another guy that I'm going to mention is Ryan Pepio. The definitely the big piece coming back in the trade with the Dodgers for Tyler Glass now, and he's a bulldog on the mound. And we got a chance to ask him that as well when he joined us in the studio over at WDAE. My buddy Zach Blobner and myself, I love his makeup. He's a little bit different. Everybody else, the two guys I just mentioned in Taj and Shane Baz, they're pretty stoic. Not Pepio. Like Pepio, you can tell he's pitching. He's just his face gets red. He gets jacked up. Like he's so into it. He's a bulldog, man. And he's 26 years old. And listen, as long as you keep him away from spiders and spider bites, I think he's going to be a big part of this rotation too. But think about it. Three surefire cornerstones of this team in the starting rotation. And I'm not done there. Number four is a guy that we haven't seen this year, and that's Shane McClanahan. And when you look at Shane and what he has already done in a Rays uniform, uh, you want to talk about the top of the top. You start the All-Star game for the American League. That's respect. It's not just something that you earn because of what you've done, like in that first half of the season, but it's the way you carry yourself. And again, you don't just get that handed to you all willy nilly. Like you earn that type of thing. And you still see Shane in the dugout, and he still wants to be a part of this team, still wants to be around the team, even though he can't contribute this year. But to see Shane McClanahan in this rotation, leading it off next year, and if he comes back fully healthy, I fully expect him to get that start on opening day. He's one of four cornerstones in the starting rotation for this team. Now, is that a worry? Is that a concern that there's only one, two, three, four, Caminero and Lowe, six, maybe seven? You could say that. But you look at other teams, and I'd rather have four starting pitchers than maybe four position players, because I think the starting pitchers are so few and far between with how successful they are and how good they are. And if you're looking at a rotation with those four guys next year, with the Jeffrey Springs, with the Drew Rasmussen, you can never have too many starting pitchers. But for me, the six cornerstones for this team are Shane McClanahan, Shane Baz, Taj Bradley, Ryan Pepio, Junior Caminero, and Josh Lowe. Those six. And I do have high hopes for guys like Dylan Carlson. I think he can contribute in a big way going forward. Switch hitter playing left field. Um, ultimate change of scenery guy, as I mentioned. And then you look at Jeffrey Springs and Drew Rasmussen, and maybe even some of the guys out of the pen, like you said, like Rodriguez, like Pete Fairbanks, like Colin Poche. You're going to get contributions from the bullpen. But I look at those six guys as the cornerstones of the Rays, not just in 2025, but hopefully moving forward. Because one thing, talking with Rays president Erik Neander a couple of days ago, they didn't want to go back into, all right, well, we got to the postseason. We had a nice run for these couple of years, and then just go all the way in the crapper before they had to dig themselves out. And now, it's like you have to work everything up. No, they're kind of resetting on the fly, they're restocking, reshuffling, and they're looking to 2025 as a year they can really make an impression, not just in the division, but trying to make a run for the pennant for the third time in their history and possibly win a World Series. It starts with the starting rotation. It really does. And that's what's exciting, is that four of the six guys, in my opinion, when it comes to the cornerstones, are the guys that are going to toe the slab every 5 days. All right, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at Recher. We're talking Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Pinterest. I don't have a Pinterest, but anywhere that you have a social media platform, check me out at Recher. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel here, because I'm going to try to go live as much as humanly possible every single night, especially after big games. Monday nights after Monday Night Raw, Friday nights after Friday Night Smackdown, Saturday nights after big fights. I'll probably go live Saturday night. It's going to be a late one. after UFC 30, was it 305, 306, whatever the heck it is. You get lost with all the numbers, but with Dricus Duplessis and Israel Adesanya, that is going to be wild from Australia. So cannot wait for that one. And it's listen, unique start time. You have to keep an eye out for that. So the start time is Saturday, 10 p.m. So over there, it'll be that's pretty funny. It's 10 p.m. over here. Prelims start at 8 o'clock, and over there it'll be noon the next day. So they'll be fighting in the future. So I mentioned Duplessis and Israel Adesanya for the UFC middleweight title. Kai Kara France and Steve Erceg, a nice flyweight battle. Mateus Gamrot against Dan Hooker. Oh my gosh. Tai Tuivasa and Jairzinho Rosenstruik. Oh man, that will not go the distance. You want to let everybody know, or let my guy Aaron Jacobson know. Tai Tuivasa, Jairzinho Rosenstruik. That is not going to go 3 rounds. That is not going to go the distance. That will certainly, there'll be a knockout at some point. Before we talk some wrestling here, I want to get to a question, and shout out to Carrick for sending this in from Carrick Barnett. Thoughts on Ten Hag? He plays a horrible style of football, needs to be sacked. Yeah, it's a tough putt when you're talking about Erik Ten Hag because for me, I like that there's some structure to his like process as far as all right, structure on the training pitch, structure on the training ground, knowing that you need certain players in certain spots, but that doesn't mean anything if it doesn't translate on the field. And once again, we see a team, and they're obviously playing without a striker, so they're playing kind of with a false nine with Bruno Fernandez and Mason Mount. The game was good today because they came away with the victory, but it was a very, very late goal from Joshua Zirkzee in the 87th minute, where if he doesn't score that goal, and you're talking about a 0-0 draw at home at Old Trafford in the season opener against Fulham, it's a massive disappointment. If you want things to be different, then you have to have that killer instinct. I think some of it is on Ten Hag. I mean, especially last year when there were so many gaps in the midfield, there was such open space for the counterattack for these other teams, and guys were just wide open. And Ten Hag's response was, "Oh, it's because all of our injuries and because we don't have the same back line." And some of that could be on the players, and he's not going to throw those guys under the bus. But you saw it today. That's what gives me a little bit of hope is you saw the high line played by the 4 guys that they had back there, and they need to continue to do that. When you have Mazraoui out there, you have Dalo as your fullbacks, and then you have Licha Martinez, who was massive today. A small guy, but he plays. You want to talk about it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Look at Lisandro Martinez. You saw that on display when he started with Manchester United, but you really saw it for Argentina in Copa America. They used to call him the Butcher of Amsterdam when he played with Ajax. That guy, he is a game changer. He is one of those guys that he just pulls his team into the fight. A great clearance off the line today. So, Carrick, I hear you. I don't know if it's a horrible style of football if he doesn't necessarily have all his guys and he's yet to have a full healthy group. Because you look at when he was at Ajax with that team, and a lot of those guys went on to success with other teams. I mean, they went to the semifinals of the Champions League. So and he was able to find a way to put a game plan together to beat Man City. So you beat Man City in the FA Cup, and I know how they scored, right? The ball over the top where there was a miscommunication with Gavardiol and Ortega in net, and you see Alejandro Garnacho slip in behind and score the goal. And the second one, listen, that was just a masterclass. The no-look pass from Bruno Fernandes to Kobe Mano, and he's able to finish it off, and you beat Man City in an FA Cup final. So the ability to get results at the end of the day, I'd rather have a manager that can get results even if it isn't the prettiest style of soccer. Um, because you look at some of these other clubs and yeah, you say, oh, they've done so well, and a team like Arsenal. But like, let's say Arsenal doesn't win the league again this year, and they don't win any of the cups because they've been going out early in the cups in Europe, and they've come second to Man City. I mean, is that worth anything? I don't think so. You don't get a prize for second place in the Premier League. No, it's just there's only one team that hoists the trophy at the end of the season. Just one. Go win you a cup. Learn how to win. And in back-to-back seasons, the Manchester United, it hasn't been pretty, but at least in cup competition, they were been able to come up in the Carabao Cup a couple of years ago, in the FA Cup last year, and come away with some victories. And you never know, man. A win like we just saw today at Old Trafford could help them kick on and give them some momentum going forward. They got Brighton next, and then the third game of the season against Liverpool with Arne Slot as the new coach. We'll see, right? Because we've seen some crazy performances against Liverpool the last couple of years, where they had the big win a couple of years ago when Jadon Sancho scored the goal, and then the absolute ass beating. What was it, 7-0, 8-0? I'm not one of those guys that turns off games. I am a fan through and through, and I'll stick with it. But that game against Liverpool when they lost what, 7 out there, 8 out, I after four I was done. I was gone. One of my few instances in my life where I ever turned off the game. I was like, screw that. But we'll see, Carrick. If Manu goes on a little bit of a skid here, and they don't put it all together, he will definitely be on the hot seat, especially because he's got an assistant manager now in Ruud van Nistelrooy. People love Ruud. Hell, I love Ruud. And he's a guy, he has some managerial experience now. He's got, people are looking at Ruud. They're going to look at him more and more if Den Hag and this team struggles. And you look at the end of the game today when Garnacho missed that chance at the end, right before the final whistle. Who was the guy that went over to console him? But it was Ruud van Nistelrooy. And Ruud was one of the last guys off the pitch with the players, walking off, giving hugs to these guys, walking off the pitch with Diogo Dallo. Um, I mean, he's a beloved player, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. I mean, we've seen it whether it's Frank Lampard at Chelsea, um, even though he didn't coach at Arsenal, but you saw like people love Patrick Vieira, what he was able to do at Crystal Palace, Ollie with Manchester United. Just because you were a club legend as a player doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have automatic success as a coach. But those whispers will get louder if this team struggles. But I like the mindset that he brings, and hopefully he'll impart some of that like killer instinct on these guys, because you have to finish. Like that game should have been 4-0, maybe 4-1 today. I mean, too many chances missed by Bruno, Rashford, Garnacho. It just got to be better. You have to be better. If you're going to constantly climb up the table, if you want to be a team that's going to finish in the top four and play in the Champions League next year, you have to score. Yeah, you got to be better defensively. You got to close those gaps. You got to score more goals. That's no excuse. You can give me the injuries on the back line. You can tell me Casemiro's slow and they need more of an midfield presence. I get that. But with guys like Garnacho and Rashford and Anthony and Sancho and Ahmad and Palistri, if he's in there, and now that you have Hoyland and Xerxes and Bruno Fernandez who can give you goals, and Kobe Minu and Scott McTominay who is like a super sub, uh, Casemiro chips in with the headers. Like you got enough guys there that can score. So that to me, I think just by the law of averages is going to improve this year. And if they do that, I'd be very surprised if they didn't finish in the top four. This is such a wonky year in the Premier League, and I know we're going a little deeper on soccer than I originally planned. But Carrick, you spurred that on this conversation. You spurred this conversation on the show today. Um, I have a feeling that this could be a real wonky year in the Premier League, because this could possibly be the last year for Pep Guardiola as the gaffer there in Man City. Liverpool's got a new skipper, and Arsenal, people are just waiting for them to kind of take that next step. People are waiting for Arsenal. All right, this is your year. Time for you to go. Time for you to overtake Man City. But they got incredibly lucky with injuries last year. No big injuries to guys like Declan Rice or Odegaard or Saka, Saliba, Raya and net. And I know they have Ramsdale too, but you look at this team and they didn't have to deal with some of the injuries like some of these other teams had to deal with. And we've seen impacts of injuries before, even if it's like on a small sample size, with like a De Bruyne, or like a suspension with Rodri when he missed a couple of games, or a couple seasons ago when Virgil van Dijk was out for Liverpool. What would happen if one of those Arsenal players went down? I'm not wishing that on them, of course, but if they lose like an Odegaard, if they lose a Declan Rice, that could change the way that Arteta plays, and they might feel the heat. They might feel the pressure. And again, they're gonna be playing in the cups. They're gonna be playing in the Champions League. Like, do they put more of an onus, more of a focus on that? And if they do that, does that take some of the momentum away from the Premier League? So I think it's going to be a great year. I think Aston Villa is going to give it a go again. I think Newcastle is going to bounce back. I think Ange Postecoglou is a fantastic coach for Tottenham. Um, Liverpool's got a slew of good players up front, and then you're anchored by Virgil van Dijk in the back. West Ham made some really good pickups. Interested to see Nicholas Fulkrug up front, see what he can do. My guy Jimmy Ward-Prowse over there. So it's going to be a fun year. And the three relegation clubs, can they stay up? Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich Town. I can't wait to watch this. What I love about the Premier League, to watch Ipswich against Liverpool. That's going to be awesome to be able to see Kieran McKenna and see how they fare after just getting promoted, and the fans so happy. I think it's the first time in 23 years, if I'm not mistaken, and playing against one of the biggest clubs in the world. And then Manchester City and Chelsea. Oh man, Chelsea's got 42 players on the roster. You can only play 11, but you could probably play with 15. I still don't think they'll beat Man City. Big thank you to T Hall or Thaw 345 J Recher Rocks. Appreciate you very much. All right, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at J Recher. Give me a second. Appreciate that. Sometimes you gotta wet the old whistle a little bit. Okay, let's talk some Friday Night Smackdown. And as my guy Sheamus says, banger after banger after banger, WWE just continues to fire on all cylinders. And you look at the Smackdown tonight, and I was in the beginning, I was wondering, like, okay, how long is this going to go on for? Nia Jax, the celebration. She's now the queen of the ring and the women's champion on SmackDown here after beating Bayley at SummerSlam. And you see Tiffany Stratton, you see Pretty Deadly, you see a bunch of pink decorations. And I was like, that doesn't really scream Nia Jax to me. And I like that they went into that. And I also like that it wasn't too long. Pretty Deadly kind of sang, they did their own little thing there. I like that. I like this combination of Tiffany Stratton and Pretty Deadly because I think Pretty Deadly got rushed through NXT and then right up to the big time. I don't think enough people really. You got to get. I think part of the reason that some of these NXT guys come up and have success is because they had a little bit of a run, and even guys like myself that try to watch, like I'll watch pretty much every Raw and SmackDown, but I'll watch maybe every other NXT or one every three NXTs. And I think a lot of people are like that because it's a Tuesday. You get some other things going on. Uh, it's just a different product. That's all. Not better or worse, but you need to be able to have those people on the tip of your tongue, and you know exactly who they are. And you look at some of the success of the guys in the WWE that had success at NXT, and look at how long they were down there. And I mean, look at a guy like Carmelo Hayes. We'll talk about him in a bit. He was the champion there. Seth Rollins and who else? I mean, just look at everybody up and down the roster for the most part. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and it's just like you can just look at everybody that's on the SummerSlam card. I think the majority of them have come up through NXT, but they were there for a while. So you saw the matches between like Bayley and Sasha Banks and those takeover matches that were just epic. They were legendary. So when they came up to WWE, they already had like a little portion of the fan base that knew exactly who they were. And I think WWE screws up a little bit and I understand there's got to be some type of legality to it. But I think one of the biggest things that they screw up is when they bring guys up to the main roster and they change their names. And I mean, Gunther was Walter. I think Walter was an awesome name. I mean, Gunther, it eventually worked out, but I think it kills people sometimes. You take away their music. Keith Lee, Bask in His Glory was huge in NXT, and then you don't necessarily bring that with them up to the main roster, and that was a huge part of why people got behind him. Mia Yim, now she's Michin. You know, Io Sky was Io Shirai. Like those little things, I get it. Like I get that you have to do that, I guess, but I don't know. I just keep it the same. Keep it the same. Kevin Owens, KO, Sami Zayn, Shinsuke Nakamura, right? Keep those names going forward. I think that's certainly that'll something that'll help. But Pretty Deadly, like there's a lot of people that may know Pretty Deadly, but they don't even know their names. They don't even if you knew the names, it's hard to tell the difference between the two. So that's certainly something to be mindful of. But you pair them up with somebody like Tiffany Stratton, and I think that's a good group going forward. And then here comes Michin with a kendo stick and just beating the crap out of everybody, which I like to see. What's going to happen with Michin? I thought she had some skills. You know, you saw her. I think she was in, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the Mae Young Classics. That's how everybody was originally introduced to her. And then you join her up with the OC, and she's there with AJ Styles and with, you know, Gallows and Anderson. And it was a little bit of a weird type of addition there. I think a lot of people wanted it to be Charlotte Flair because they knew that there was, you know, the friendliness with the Flair and Styles with, you know, AJ working with Rick back in the TNA days, and there's just a lot of respect there, and that would have made a lot of sense, and I think it would have brought more eyeballs to the product. But Michin, I think it kind of fell flat a little bit, and then when AJ kind of went off and did his own thing as he's going against Cody and taking on more of that heel persona, she just seemed a little out of, you know, just it wasn't really a good fit in my opinion. I think she's talented. I think she's a heck of a wrestler, and I love the way she looked tonight. I think she looked strong. I love that she was wearing the Tims. Like I liked how she was presented tonight. It's probably one of my favorite presentations of Michin so far. And we see later on the show that she's going to get a title shot against Nia Jax. So I like that. I think it made a lot of sense and good for her. Let's see if she can make the most of the opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about Fanatics at the end and what was going on in New York City today and entrances. Next thing was Naomi coming out. She took the loss to Blair Davenport, which is fine. It's a back and forth. You're going to get the 3-on-3 match next week with Naomi, Bianca Belair, and Jade Cargill against Isla Dawn and Alba Fire and Blair Davenport. So just that makes a lot of sense because the babyface are probably going to go over then. The heel went over tonight with Blair Davenport, but it's so cool to see Naomi get a pop every single time WWE is in Orlando. And it doesn't it never fails every single time. And it's not like that everywhere. You'll get maybe like a little bit of a cheap pop here and there, but there's a connection there. That is not something that's fake. That is not something that is contrived. That is a legit connection that Naomi has with that Orlando crowd. And it's really cool to see that every single time, even in Tampa, like she's from Orlando, but even when she comes to Tampa, there's a lot of love for Naomi on the I-4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando. So really, really cool to see that. Didn't necessarily like the finish of the match. That finisher with Blair Davenport, I think, left a little bit to be desired. But my big takeaway was certainly the love for Naomi from her home crowd there in Orlando. Also on Friday night SmackDown, another video package for Giovanni Vinci. He looks Cuban to me. Just I don't know if it's because we live in Florida now and it's just seeing a lot of Cubanos, but he looks Cuban. So he's going to the Italian roots, and I guess they're hoping by playing the video packages of him getting the little offense that he's really gotten into since he's been called up to the main roster, that this is going to make a big difference. I hope it does for his sake. I really do. But you got to get into these feuds. That's the big thing. Get into the feuds. Get in there, start mixing it up. And you saw it again tonight with that match between Carmelo Hayes and Andrade. I've been calling for this for weeks. A best of 7. Now you've seen Andrade get the first 2, Carmelo Hayes with the third, and then he's like rubbing in the victory in Andrade's face, and then the officials and the referees had to pull him apart. Like that was one of the best segments of the night on SmackDown. And I keep thinking to myself, that storyline right now is better than anything in AEW. Think about that. 2 guys not fighting for a belt. That's why it shows you. I think that's where one of the things where AEW kind of fell into a trap where, all right, we'll give a belt here and we'll give a belt. They literally have a continental belt and an American belt to go along with a TNT championship and a TBS championship. And it's tag team titles and a trios tag. Like every other guy on the show is a champion. You take away the value of a title if you give out so many of them. And you don't need a title to have a good storyline. You don't need a title to have a good series of matches. Look at what's going on. Andrade lost last week in that number 1 contender match to Santos Escobar. And you could argue that I think Escobar against LA Knight's going to be good, but this is a fiery matchup right now. I want to see it again. I think they put on another show. Keep it going. I hope they wrestle for the rest of the year. Andrade against Carmelo Hayes, those guys, they don't miss. They do not miss. So good to see there, and I like that long term storytelling from WWE. Next up, you look at Kevin Owens. He's so over with the crowd. He's in that match with Grayson Waller, and WWE has to be very careful with how they position Kevin Owens before this match, during the match, after the match, because you've built up this entire good fortune with him as being a babyface. That if you're not going to go long term with this with Cody, I think it's a waste if you have him like tonight. They both had chairs in their hands. The old Kevin Owens, the I turn on everybody Kevin Owens would have just blasted Cody and beat the crap out of him. But that's not what you saw. You saw him put the chair down. He kind of picked up the belt, held it, put it to his chest, and walked away. Not really a heel move, but just kind of a, hey, you're in my crosshairs. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if he at some point turns heel in this whole thing, and then after the match at Bash in Berlin, then what? Then who does he feud with? And I think you kind of lose all of the momentum that you've built up with KO, because I think he's done a really job as a really good job as a babyface, and I think one day he'll be a heel. But I think right now he's earned that respect where people like they just like cheering for Kevin Owens. They like people. He does some incredibly athletic things for a guy his size. I mean, all the cannonball stuff and the swantons. He's creative offensively. He's funny. Like if you're gonna have him wrestle this match with Cody, I think you just got to keep it on the up and up. Keep it on the up and up. Don't tease a heel turn. I don't think you need that. I don't think you need that at all. And I know some people are upset that Cody Rhodes is fighting all these like respect matches and it's not like a blood rivalry. Well, that's what he did for a year to try to fight back to get to Roman Reigns. So I like that they're switching up and showing some depths of his character, and he's bringing the best out of some of these other guys. But this is not a storyline, in my opinion, that's going to go all the way to like the Royal Rumble. Eventually, Randy's going to turn on him. You would think you need another, or when is he going to wrestle The Rock? Is that going to be at the Royal Rumble? Who's he going to wrestle at WrestleMania next year? This to me, if you're going to do a match with Kevin Owens and you're going to do like a full heel turn, it should be at a big time pay per view. Not taking anything away from Bash in Berlin, but it's only a one shot go with these two guys. I'm afraid that if you turn him heel against Cody, that he has no direction after that. And for a guy that's worked so hard to be a babyface now, and people actually enjoy that, um, I wouldn't be so quick to make the move back. After that match, how about our guy Titus O'Neil? Shout out to Titus. Go follow him right now. Tell him that Jay Retcher sent you. And he's got a new book coming out in September. And what a philanthropist. What a great guy. Wrestling with Fatherhood, my championship journey to my greatest title, Dad. And Titus O'Neil, forward by two-time Emmy-nominated producer Will Packer. Again, Wrestling with Fatherhood, my championship journey to my greatest title, Dad. Titus O'Neil, Paul Guzzo. You can pre-order it right now on Amazon. September 3rd, 2024 is when it's going to be released. He also has a book, There's No Such Thing as a Bad Kid. Titus has done so many good things for the Tampa Bay era, and I consider him a friend. Love the guy. He's just a fantastic human being, and anytime that myself and my family can help out him at any of his charitable endeavors, we will definitely be there. So I got a lot of love for Titus. So make sure you go order a book, order multiple books. Follow him on social media at Titus O'Neil WWE, and yeah, tell him Jay Retcher sent you. Also on Monday Night Raw, Legado del Fantasma at the table. I like that they brought it back again. Escobar, see, yeah, to kind of mimic the L.A. Night. Yeah, love that. Love that. I think it's going to be an interesting story there, an interesting program with Legado del Fantasma, led by Santos Escobar against LA Knight. And I love that LA Knight just did his promo on the ramp. Didn't have to go all the way into the ring. Didn't get attacked from behind. It was different. It wasn't the same old, same old. And with the way that the new setup there, the new stage, they don't have like that big elevated ramp like we saw back in the old Monday Night Raw days. I like that he was kind of like you're kind of like in the crowd doing that promo. I really, really like that. It was subtle. It was quick. It was right to the point. He was talking about, you calling me trash, I'm going to whoop your ass. I love that. It was great. Best match of the night, could be best match of the month. DIY Street Profits for the number one contendership of the tag team titles. Bravo, gentlemen. Bravo. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, uh, Angelo Dawkins, and Montez Ford. You guys stole the freaking show tonight. So many great close false finishes. The ability to just do a little bit of everything in that match. There was great technical chain wrestling. There was some good high flying stuff. There was good tandem offense. Man, and it just showed like two baby face teams, two teams that people want to cheer, two teams that people love, right? And they put on a show. They stole that freaking show. That was a big time PLE match that we saw on Friday Night SmackDown. So bravo to those guys. Love the finish. I love that the Street Profits went over. They need to get farther and farther away from what was going on with Bobby Lashley, where they were very serious. And this is kind of the same ilk of what I was just talking about with Kevin Owens, where when you build up something in it and and people like it, and people enjoy it. It could be on the heel side too. I'm kind of getting that way with Miz. Like people like booing Miz. Right now it's fun, he's with our truth, but it's only a matter of time for when Miz is a heel. We like hating on Miz. We don't really like hating on, Kevin Owens right now. We don't want to watch serious buttoned up Street Profits where we don't want to see that. We want to see the solo cups. You can do that and just evolve with it. You can change the gear, make the gear a little bit more fun. I still think it's a little bit too buttoned up, but the way they play to the crowd and the way that they get them into it, and you see the reaction at the end of that match, like that's a huge pop. So bravo to those guys. That was very, very impressive. And then it ended with what we thought it was going to end with. Solo Sokoa out there with Tamatanga. And this is what I thought was going to happen last week. I thought Roman Reigns comes back. Everybody's excited to see him. And he was going to come out and just get the absolute tar beaten out of him. Watch out, Roman. Here comes everybody. But the WWE in classic form, they don't rush it. They're very patient and they bring him back last week. He kind of gets his 5 pounds of flesh, but you see a guy like Solo Sokoa kind of, he gets away. He gets away. And, the other guys in the ring, when you look at Tangaloa and Tamatanga, they get their ass beat. And we saw that with Solo when he was that guy getting his ass beat for Roman for a while. But the big thing was the Ulafala, that necklace. And Solo gets away with it. So he's still the tribal chief. He's still the head of the table. And you see some of the montages, the backstage segments. You knew it was going to all come to a head tonight. And I like how they started it. You take the Ulaf, you give it over to Solo Sokoa. Solo gives it over to Tamatanga, and him and Roman just stand there in the middle of the ring, and they just start throwing blows, and people start losing their mind. And then eventually Roman gets the upper hand. Here comes Tamatanga, the beatdown. Then Roman comes. He gets the upper hand. He looks like he's about to throw somebody through a table. Doesn't happen. Goes back in the ring. Picks up the Ulafala. He puts it around his neck. And that was the loudest pop of the night. People were so excited. The tribal chief is back. The OTC, the original tribal chief, the head of the table. Because Solo said earlier in the night to Tamatanga, whoever wears this, I want Roman to acknowledge me. Whoever's wears this is the tribal chief, and I will acknowledge them, and you will too. Thought that was very, man, well, planting the seeds there, planting the seeds. So here comes Roman, puts on the Ulafala, camera angle changes, and then in my mind I go, here he comes, and on cue, boom, here's Jacob Fatu laying waste to Roman Reigns, hitting him some hard shots. The hip attack from one corner to the next, and the shot of Roman laying on the ground with his eyes open like that. I was listening to the podcast, What Do You Want to Talk About with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. And Cody asked Randy about, like, who's the GOAT? And Randy hated that conversation. He's like, I like the Mount Rushmore, top 5, top 10, top 20, but I don't like the GOAT. Because you think somebody's a great wrestler, but is it the guy that does all the moves, the guy that goes over, or is it the guy that kind of makes them look good? And man, that just kind of put my head in a tailspin there of, yeah, there's some incredible offensive moves that we've seen over the years, but the best guys are the ones that not only can deliver those offensive moves, but when they take them, let's remember what they're doing here, right? Um, the guys that can sell like that and the entire package, that's what truly makes them great. That's why a guy like Brock Lesnar, he's really one of the more underrated stars that we've ever seen. He's such a physical specimen. We know Suplex City is it's incredible, but look at how he sold for guys like Seth Rollins, for guys like Roman Reigns, for guys like Goldberg. Like that's a lot of credit is should be given to a guy like Brock Lesnar. That's why a guy like Shawn Michaels. Look at Ric Flair. Even a guy that maybe bumped a little bit too much for certain people's ears, but that's why people love a guy like Dolph Ziggler. Nick Nemeth is now getting that run in TNA. But Roman, such a great job laying in the corner there, his eyes open, and then eventually, it all ends with that big former Shield power bomb through the table. Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa, and Tama Tonga. They drag Roman back in the ring, and in the perfect camera angle, he's there, turned. Roman's such a pro. If you watch this video, Roman makes sure he takes his hair, pushes his hair back so you can see his face, so that they can see his face on TV because he knows that look is going to be everywhere. And for his hair to be covering his face, it's not good. And it was just such a little subtle thing. That's a pro. That is a pro move right there. And standing strong at the end of Friday Night SmackDown, the new bloodline with Solo Sikoa right there in the middle, rocking the Ulafala. He's got Tama Tonga on one side. He's got Jacob Fatu on the other side. And then a prone Roman Reigns lying on the floor after just getting his ass beat. That's exactly how it should have ended. And I wouldn't be surprised if next week it's very similar because Roman's going to be there. But maybe this is when you start bringing some other guys in. Maybe you start bringing in a Jimmy Uso because I think he's next. I think you bring Jimmy back. Do you start introducing Hikuleo in there, right? Where does this whole thing go? When does The Rock insert himself? Because we're not building to Bash in Berlin for this storyline here. We're building towards Survivor Series. So as we get closer, and I know there's some time because you still got Bad Blood as well. You're gonna have Bash in Berlin. You're gonna have Bash in Berlin. You're gonna have Bad Blood. You're gonna have Survivor Series. It's going to be a great build. The way that the WWE has been doing it, man, you can't think that they're not going to get this right. They've just been doing such a phenomenal job. All right, but before the end of the show, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you guys my top 5 entrances of all time because we see the incredible Fanatics um, display that they have going on in the Javits Center in New York City. Like it's all stars there, insane. See Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski there today, and Dana White, and Jalen Brunson was there, and Jalen Brunson speaking at Fanatics. And WWE is the most popular thing there with all the entrances. You saw Tom Brady yesterday, practicing his entrance. That was really cool. But that got me thinking, what is my top 5 entrances of all time? So, and listen, these aren't, I'm not saying these are the best. These aren't like the top, like, so Stone Cold's not on my list. Because to me, the glass shattering was epic, right? But the entrance was just him like walking down the ramp like a badass, right? Ready to stomp a mud hole in somebody's ass. Like that was his thing. I don't look at that as the greatest entrance, right? I mean, I can't be the only one that thinks that. Again, not taking anything away from Stone Cold because when the glass shatters, that was unlike anybody. I know some people are going to say, "Well, that's an entrance." I get it, but just not one of my top 5 favorites. All right, so here are my top 5 favorite WWE entrances of all time. Number 5, I'm going to go with Rey Mysterio in the early 2000s. Now, if you remember Rey Mysterio in the early 2000s, you remember when he was on SmackDown, right when kind of the 619 started, he would come up from the ground and they would pop and he would fly out, fly up through the stage. And it was just one of the coolest things that you're ever going to see. If you've never seen any of these entrances before, I plead with you, go over to YouTube and check them out. But number 5 is definitely Rey Mysterio in the early 2000s on SmackDown, popping up from underneath the stage. It gets me every single time. Number 4, The Shield. Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins. When that music hit, people just started looking around because they knew that these guys weren't walking down the ramp. They weren't, going through gorilla. They were coming from somewhere in the crowd. They could be in the same position. They could be in three different positions. But listen, you even saw it at WrestleMania. At WrestleMania 40, Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes. Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes. You heard that Shield music go off, and I know you probably thought the same thing. Wait, is John Moxley here? Is Cody? Is Ambrose here? Is Dean Ambrose here? No, it was Seth Rollins, and of course he wasn't 100%. So like the camera, they really didn't help. But I know I wasn't the only person that popped. But that to me is one of the best entrances of all time. Number three, Finn Balor as the Demon. The timing that Finn Balor had during this entrance was impeccable. The way that he would just bring those arms out and the way that WWE would film it so that the lighting would be in a certain spot and all the fans would go back in this at the same time. Then he would go in the ring, do his little thing against the ropes, went up on the turnbuckle, and his dun 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 dun, like that crushed it. That was such a phenomenal entrance. And now Finn, he's a heel, obviously, in the new Judgment Day. So we're not going to see that. But I hope before all is said and done, when Finn gets another babyface run down the road, that we see that entrance again because it is one of my favorites of all time. Number three on my list. Number two, I'm going back a little old school here. And I'm going to go with a guy who is not currently in WWE. And I'm going to go with a guy that's currently in AEW. And that is Y2J. Break the walls down. And it was so simple. But him standing right there in the entranceway with his arms out, with those jackets that he had that were lit up with all of the bells and whistles, he was so far ahead of his time when it came to the entrances. And you think of all the returns, like surprise returns. You think when he made his initial debut going up against The Rock, like that is just so iconic. The mix of whatever was on the Titantron with him, the way he presented himself, the true Ayatollah of rock and rolla. My second favorite entrance of all time in wrestling history is Y2J. Number one, I really don't think there's an argument here. I don't think that it's like, I think that this is not only my favorite, but I also think that this is the best. No doubt in my mind. And that is The Undertaker. You can't deny this. You can't, because there's multiple things about his entrance that still to this day, right? Goosebumps. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Whether it's the lights going out, whether it's the gong going off, whether it's the druids that are out there with the fire, whether it's the smoke, whether it's the pyro that would come out. I was in the upper deck at Amalie Arena probably 15 years ago for a Monday Night Raw. And the flames went up when Undertaker came out, and I can feel the heat on my face. Incredible. He goes up to the steps, hands go up, the lights go on. Undertaker, the entrance and the exit. I mean, you think about what he was able to do at WrestleManias. There was just so much, and this was a guy that you think about it now, playing the dead man. Like, how would that go over now? Like, if the Undertaker started in 2024, would that character be over? Would that be believable? I don't know. But he came in at such a perfect time, right there, debuted at the Survivor Series on Ted DiBiase's team, and he was able to kind of just tweak his character here and there. He goes back, he does the American Badass stuff, he does the Big Evil stuff, but eventually back to the Dead Man and the best character in wrestling history. Gotta love The Undertaker. The best character in history, and for my money, the best and my favorite entrance of all time. All right, make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at JRecher. I thought this was just going to be like a 20-minute episode, but you give me a question on soccer and then we start talking wrestling. I'm definitely going to go a ways. Still no word on the Rays and that pitcher going on the IL from our guy Mark Topkin. Keeping an eye out for that. Still nothing. Hopefully isn't, unfortunately, one of the big names, but we'll certainly keep an eye on that and keep you abreast of that situation. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at JRecher, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and like and subscribe to me on YouTube, please. And hit that the notifications bell so you can hear when I go live, because tomorrow is going to be another nutty one. Buccaneers, Rowdies, UFC, plenty to get into. It's going to be a late one tomorrow night. It's probably going to be midnight, 1 a.m., because there's plenty to talk about. But yeah, please share all this stuff, like and subscribe, because the bigger I get, the more love that we can spread to everybody. And that's the whole goal here on Recher Reacts. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Over 160 viewers tonight. Really do appreciate you, Carrick and T Haw or Thaw, for chiming in. You guys are the best. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Recher Reacts. Peace out.